Over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Manju. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I've been asked to come along to kind of give some insights as to what we're seeing at Hunter Adams with regards to HR profession, and the skills required going forward. I don't have a huge amount of slides, but I'm happy to share them afterwards. What I thought I'd just go through for the first couple of slides is just really about who we are at Hunter Adams, what we do, and I know Manju's introduced myself, but a few things about myself. So at Hunter Adams, we are an employee-owned HR consultancy. We're HR recruiting HR. We are HR that speak with our clients regarding providing interim solutions, consultancy solutions, and also project type solutions. And what that means is we're actually working with a number of different clients throughout the UK. We've got over 650 clients on the books, and that's everything from oil and gas, retail, media, pharmaceutical, tech startups, travel firms, third sector, finance. So we get really an opportunity to speak to a number of different clients to understand what's happening in their business. But with that, what are the skills that are required to support them to meet their business strategy? So that's where the slides have come from and what I'm kind of going to go through with everybody. So a little bit about me. There's a personal me and then there's a work me, and they both do meet. I am originally from the Highlands, although I was told by my English friends I've got a Scottish accent, and from my Scottish friends I've got an English accent, so I think I've got a bit of a hybrid accent. I am married with 2 dogs who are my fur babies, and I have a real passion for traveling and experiencing new cultures. So we were talking just before we went online about being able to go back and see family and travel, and I think that's probably been the hardest thing for me through lockdown, is not being able to get out and about as much and to experience those new cultures. And I think for me personally, the biggest thing I'm proud of, and that is the renovation, rebuilding of a farmhouse, starting my master's, living in a caravan and a new job at the same time, and remaining married, which I think will still go down as my proudest moment to date in my personal life. The work me, as Manju said, I've started many years ago. I started in the learning and development side of HR. Had some great opportunities throughout my career to work in different industries. And then within oil and gas to lead the conversion programme through in GE when we were struggling for technical skills. Whilst that was a key highlight for me, was an opportunity to come out of HR and work within the business and the technical side of the business, which gave me a really good operational and commercial side, and then returning back within HR to take on the senior HR management role within GE. It was through an opportunity to take voluntary redundancy that led me to Hunter Adams to do a piece of work for them, which then also led me the opportunity to go out to Mallorca to work for one of their clients on a 12-month contract to set up a continuous performance management improvement approach, before being having conversations about coming back to the UK and working with Hunter Adams again as the head of HR, and then through to being promoted to director of HR of where I am today for the past 3 years. So that's just a little bit about me, where I've come from, and what I like. So we're looking at the future of HR. I think it's quite important really to have a look backwards and just to have a quick glance. If we think back to the beginning of 2020, and the CIPD at that point was predicting trends for 2020. And if you remember words such as Brexit, gender pay gap reporting, well-being was becoming quite a big thing for companies to look at, as well as the continuous performance management, and for HR to get within data analytics. And I think these things are still important today, but then along came COVID. And as we all know, in March 2020, we were all asked where possible to work, stay at home and work. For most of us, that did mean picking up our laptops or computers, turning the lights off, For some, it also meant remaining at work and everything that came with it. And for most of us, we thought this was going to happen for a few weeks. I remember reading emails a couple of weeks ago that I'd sent way back beginning of March 2020, which was entitled Coronavirus, Should We Be Worried? Within the business, and we were looking at, is this going to impact us? And we did think we were going to be at home for maybe a couple of weeks. But I think what that provided us as HR was a number of developmental opportunities. We had a real opportunity, and we have a real opportunity to partner with our business leaders and to really make those commercial decisions. And at times, when we think back to the beginning of the pandemic, there was a huge unknown. We didn't know what we were walking into. You know, governments around the world were still trying to scramble some policies and some guidance for us, and we were having to help our businesses make decisions. We had a great opportunity for those of us that hadn't developed, or for those of us that had developed, but to build upon that stakeholder management and influencing skills. And that was both with our leaders, but also our employees, because there was a lot of unknown and we were having to support. And a lot of the times we didn't know what was happening ourselves. And it was impacting us as well. We had a great opportunity as well to really work on our agile decision-making skills. As it said there was no precedent for furlough. And for a lot of the times, our furlough guidance was dropped at 5 o'clock on a Friday night, those of us who can remember that. And by first thing Monday morning, we were expected to be experts in this. There was no case law, there was no precedent for this. So we were having to help the businesses make a lot of decisions where actually, you know, we were just learning and trying to create the strategies ourselves. We also had an opportunity to manage our employee expectations. You can remember we had Martin Lewis and Judge Rinder giving employment law and furlough updates. And not all the time it was correct. So we were having to not only deal with employees' expectations, you know, and we worked with some clients who had been, you know, met with their employees who saying, but Martin Lewis said I can do this. And Martin Lewis is telling me. So we were having to respond back to it, to re-educate, but also to come up with strategies against these. There was remote working for some. So it was, how do we make sure that everybody has got capability, the technology to work remotely, but also for managers who weren't used to managing employees remotely. And with that, it's that trust, not being able to see somebody every day, but how do you communicate differently? For those employees and employers who worked right the way through on site, what safety measures were put in place? Did we have to then look at bubbles so that if COVID did happen within that bubble, we wouldn't lose all of our staff? So there was lots of opportunities to work, whether you had employees working remotely, on site, or a mixture of both. We're constantly changing rules on quarantine, sick pay, that again, we had to make sure we were on top of. And a lot of the time it really meant we were having to help the business make decisions with not an awful lot of information. And for some people, that was really uncomfortable. There was lots of, and there's still lots of ongoing discussions regarding mandatory vaccines, vaccine passports. We know some sectors, it is mandatory to have vaccines. And again, it's really helping the business to understand what that means and whether it's the right thing or not the right thing to do. And again, there's still not an awful lot of case law around this. And there's lots of interesting cases coming out where businesses have had to make decisions based on very little and limited information. And for some employers, we had employees who returned to their home country to work at the start of the pandemic. For most of us, we thought, as we said, it was going to be a few weeks, maybe a month at most. And that's actually brought around some other challenges around about corporation tax, employee national insurance, social security contributions, employment law considerations. So we actually take a step back and look at what was HR, what we've been involved in from the start of the pandemic, continuing through the pandemic. And as we continue I think we would have all thought at this point we'd be coming out of it, but with the new variant, there's obviously lots of considerations that we're still looking at. There's been huge development opportunities that I think because we just do it, we get on with it on a day-to-day basis, we don't realise exactly and appreciate those development opportunities that we can bring forward, but also how the world of work has changed, continues to change. I had one client ask me, a couple of weeks ago, they were looking at sort of hybrid working, remote working, and saying, what does that world of work look like in 2022? And actually, I don't think that many of us know, because every time we think we've got a handle on it, a new variant comes in, something changes. So we're having to pull back maybe some of the measures that have been put in place. So it is continuing to change quite a bit. So we think about sort of 2021, of which we're nearly at the end of it, and I can't believe, and beyond. I had a look, and I've been doing some research myself, and I was going to share with you some findings that on research that was done by the Adecco Group. So they commissioned and produced a survey of which it was nearly 15,000 respondents over 25 countries who were working, so employees who were working. And it was really into the working practices, behaviours and attitudes to help organisations think about their work, the world of work, post-pandemic, and our new ways of working. And what they really identified, and I don't think this will come as a surprise to anybody, is 5 key areas. And those areas are your hybrid working, the shorter and flexible work, that actually burnout, they're predicting is going to be the new pandemic, that leaders really need to connect in with their employees, and they talk about the great reevaluation, sorry. So we think about hybrid working, we have seen that remote working doesn't lead to a loss of productivity. If we think pre-pandemic, we had lots of organizations turning down flexible working requests, saying things wouldn't work, have actually found that it does work. And we've had a number of, I would say, really quite traditional clients who have come to us and asked us to help them with their hybrid working, the remote working policies, and finding a solution that works for them, for not just their employees, but also for the business. We've also seen, Scotland, for example, are talking about trialing a 4-day working week. Is that going to work for everybody? We don't know. But what we do know is people want to, as employees, we want to work smarter, not harder. And actually what the research has shown is people want to be measured on outputs and results rather than input. But with that as well, we've heard lots of stories about people working longer and harder, through the pandemic, and that is leading to fatigue and burnout. But what we're also experiencing is managers are maybe not being able to identify quickly those people who are struggling because either they're working remotely or there's lots of pressure on. So we're really needing to work with our leaders and equip our leaders with the skills to not just manage employees through lots of different uncertainty, whether it's remotely or on site, but also how do we build that team culture and morale, as we know as HR professionals, when we have a fully engaged team, productivity does not suffer. In fact, results are a lot higher than we've got a disengaged team. So there's lots of different factors that are affecting the leader's ability to be able to build that culture and to manage effectively. And there was predictions that as we start to kind of hopefully come out of this pandemic, we would see great mass resignations. What this report is telling us that we're not going to see a tsunami of turnover, but actually people are reevaluating their career choices. They are reevaluating how they want to work. So as HR professionals, we have this opportunity to work with our leaders and businesses to really understand what the business needs to meet its strategy and how we can support our employees to be able to meet that. And what we're hearing more and more is where companies are dictating whether that you need to be in the office full time or back at work full time, or where we want you to work fully remote, so dictating on either extremes, they're seeing attrition and they're seeing a number of resignations. I have one of our associates working for a client in London who have dictated that everyone needs to be back in 5 days a week, non-negotiable, no flexibility. And when challenged by, it was a talent acquisition associate, it was non-negotiable, and their attrition has quadrupled because people are deciding that actually, no, I don't want this. I want the more flexibility. So as we emerge from COVID, and I fully hope we are emerging from it, employees are expecting and are seeking that more flexible and remote working options. Now, that doesn't mean to say fully remote, fully in the office, but again, to have that more conversations about what works for both the employer and the employee. With that hybrid option, it also gives employers opportunities to look at talent from out within that local area. Is there an opportunity to tap into talent in a different location throughout the UK to be able to work remotely? With that as well, employees, are seeking that meaningful work, but also companies who work ethically and with integrity. And we're seeing that more and more from when we're helping companies recruit for talent. There is a lot more focus from employees as to what they're looking for out of the work and out of the company. We had predicted that employees will be asking questions such as, how did you support your team through COVID? And we are seeing that as people are asking that and are interested, because what that does is that shows, I suppose, the integrity and the culture of the company. So what we really need to make sure is the, policies, and I'm not a great one for the policy police, but policies do really support the change in work. And how do we attract people, but also importantly, how do we retain the talent that we need going forward? And we know that one size doesn't fit everybody. So how can we as HR really help our leaders to attract the right people, retain the right people, to be able to meet the business strategy and be that credible business partner? So if I kind of think about the, like the future of the HR skills, it's really that opportunity to transition from, I'm going to say, operational to strategic business partner. Now, what I don't mean is we don't do any of the operational work, we just talk strategy. What I really mean by this is work with our leaders to support them, to make sure that we've got the right structures in place, we've got the right people in place. We challenge, where required, some of the decisions that's been made, and to provide the solutions. So I think, when we speak to our clients and where it's working really well, where the HR teams are working really well, is the HR is working in partnership with the business. They understand what the strategy is, they understand where the business is trying to get to commercially, and will come up with solutions to get them there. And we'll challenge where maybe the decisions aren't right, where they're ethically not right, they're maybe not acting with integrity, and to be able to come up, as I see that kind of solutions with that, to really help through coaching, upskilling leaders to develop the skills to manage those hybrid working teams. We were discussing with one of our clients about how do we make sure that through the performance management, everyone has access to, whether it's promotional opportunities, development opportunities, and it's not just the who is seen, but actually if there are people working remotely, to make sure that what their contribution is also included into it. There was also some concern with one of the clients around about, they'd given the mandate of, you can be in the office 1 to 2 days a week, you can work remotely, however that works. What they were starting to see was there was more men returning to the office and more females staying at home. And they were looking to redress the balance, not to dictate you need to be in or you need to stay at home, but to make sure that, and again, that there was no discrimination coming through, any development opportunities, any promotional opportunities, but also then to look at how is the office set up? Is it the fact that maybe somebody needs to come in slightly later, leave slightly earlier? Is there flexibility to, again, to make sure that the environment is inclusive for all? You know, I run an employee focus group with a client just at the start of the year, and one of the team members was relatively new to the business. And I got on there, it says, remember, you don't learn the tricks of the trade over Zoom. And one of the things they were struggling with was that knowledge share that happens within a working environment, where you may overhear a conversation. It's that ad hoc conversations. So the client was then going to look at how can you, I suppose, artificially recreate that. And one of the suggestions that was put in by one of the team members was, when they had a client meeting themselves, have a conversation on Zoom beforehand, but come off the meeting and then go on to another quick Zoom call to kind of digest the conversations, digest the meeting, and then to have a bit of a brainstorm as to what they were going to do going forward, because they were missing that walk to a meeting and walk back from a meeting. So they were going to look to see how they could, I suppose, artificially recreate that. But that defined career paths and development opportunities is where saying people are reevaluating their careers, they're reevaluating what they're getting out of it. And for a lot of employees, they're looking for what's that long-term career development look like. So with all of that in mind, you know, as HR, we've got the opportunity to help the business design and support employees. Not design employees, great, we could design employees. Design and support employee performance management frameworks. How do we make sure that people understand the expectations, and how are people developed? How are they supported? And then also, how are we ensuring that people are meeting those expectations? You know, I think about technology, it was the exception rather than the norm for majority of employers. If you were going to have an Atlas meeting, quite a challenging conversation, it would be done on a face-to-face basis and not done over Zoom or a Teams call. Fast forward 18 months, and you know, we've got used to, and it's quite acceptable to have these conversations over Zooms and Teams meetings. So I think for technology, for all of us, if we didn't have the technological skills before, we've had to learn them. And I think, you know, as I said there about communicating openly with employees as to when it does or does not work for the company. So if the hybrid working doesn't work, it's having that honest conversation. It's also about communicating and making sure your communication methods are inclusive to everybody. You know, we've heard some horror stories where employees were put on furlough at the first available opportunity and hadn't been communicated to by their manager for months upon months on end. Whereas, as we all know, by communicating openly, you can really gauge how people are feeling, and you can put strategies in place to either support them or mitigate against some of the risk with that. And also, it's about ensuring fair and equitable treatment. And again, we're saying, employees are looking for that worthwhile work, for, companies that are working with integrity and ethically. And where we're finding that employers maybe aren't, and I think, the next slide kind of says, it's a warning for all of us. Employees are quite open now. Social media is very accessible for everybody. So if employees are not liking what they're seeing and they're feeling that the companies are not listening to what they're not liking, they're taking to open letters. And this is just a snapshot of a couple that I've picked up on and I've been following, through Apple, through reports of discrimination and harassment. We've also had all over the news about Brewdog with the alleged culture of fear. Ubisoft is an American company and it was alleged sexual misconduct allegations. And these are all over the media, where employees perceive that they've not had fair and equitable treatment. And I think for myself, if I think back about some of the conversations we've had with clients over the last 18 months and where they've really needed support, and that is where they found that they're having to have that challenging conversation with employees and they just maybe don't know how to handle it, where there has been allegations raised, whether that's through sexual misconduct, whether that's through bullying, discrimination. And again, there maybe just don't know how to handle it. Whereas if they had HR, and a lot of the clients we deal with don't actually have HR on site because they're maybe not large enough to have HR, or for various reasons don't. Whereas actually if they had a HR professional on site who could help with them, not even when they get to that stage, but if I take a step back to where, you know, making sure they've got the right culture in place, the policies in place, and the leaders are supported and are developed, you know, and help with their skills so it doesn't get to this stage. So I think for me, some of the key takeaways is change is constant, you know, and it's here to stay. I got told many years ago, which has stuck with me, and it's probably still a kind of term that irks me at times, but get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think the last 18 months has really accelerated some of that. Key technical HR skills are critical, absolutely. And I'm not going to say they're not, but what we're finding is there is more emphasis, and I'm going to say the non-technical as I've written there, really being able to manage the stakeholders, you know, influencing whether that's employees, leaders, being able to lead change, managing change, influence the change, making sure the change goes through and everybody is included, empowered. Also understanding the business strategy and having those commercial skills, understanding the finances, understanding where solutions can be proposed based on where the business is financially, and that real effective communication skills. And there's another one that I'm not putting up there, and that's be curious, ask those questions, because it really helps driving those solutions. So if I think about, again, you know, some of the conversations we've had with our clients and what they're looking for, and especially for clients who are looking for HR to come on board, they're really looking for absolutely technical skills, but somebody can help support the managers, can coach them, can guide them, can challenge their decisions, but challenge them in such a way about driving for the right solution. Now that right solution, what works for a company that has 3 to 5 people, for a company that has 70 employees, for a company that has 5,000 employees, the solution will have to be tailored, because again, it has to be commercial. The other thing I would say as well, and I put critically analyze your theory versus practice. We all know there's companies that are great at their social media posts, their attraction posts, their induction, and say this is what we do on, for example, diversity and inclusion, well-being. This is how we engage with our employees. You need to take a real step back and say, do our actions and the way that we work and the way that our leaders role model our values, do they tie in with what we say we do? So again, if we think about what's coming up and what's really in people's minds, in the social media and the forefront of people, it is your diversity inclusion. There's lots going on about menopause and supporting women through that. There's lots about, are we supporting our employees through their well-being? Are we supporting through mental health? Are we supporting through work-life balance? Are we engaging with our employees? Are our policies family friendly in so much as we can do with regard to size of company? And again, what's reasonable for a small company compared to what's reasonable for a large company may be different, and that's okay as well. So it's really, what I would say is take a step back and say, what do we say we do and what do we actually do? And if they aren't aligned, as HR, we've got a great opportunity to work with our business to align them. And I think the final thing I would say on that is, employees have a voice. They're not afraid to use it. And definitely don't think that's a bad thing. And where that tick box policies are no longer tolerated. We are technical professionals. You know, we are a profession that brings and adds a huge amount of value to a business. You know, there's very few businesses in the world where they don't need people, they don't need employees. You know, I spoke with one client quite a few months ago. He said, well, HR, you just deal with tea, toilets and temperature. Okay, right. You know, do you have people in your business? Yes. What would you do if your people left? Well, we wouldn't have a business. Okay, let's have a conversation about what HR can help you with. Fast forward 6 months, they understand the value that HR profession can bring to a business. We really can support our leaders to role model their values, to ensure that the structures are in place, they've got the employees in place to meet those business goals and that strategic goals. So as I said, technical HR skills are absolutely critical and key. Where I think and what we're hearing and what we're seeing from our clients, the people we speak to, the HR directors we go out and speak to, what differentiates for them the HR professional they need within the business is that real commercial understanding, that ability to manage stakeholder and that ability to manage change and to be able to provide that solutions to the business, because that's what they're looking for. Does anybody have any questions? I think that's about enough of me talking.
Any questions from anybody? Sarah, that was really great, and it was a wonderful presentation. Sorry, my video is off. Apologies.
It's
Thank
okay.
you very
I've lost
much.
all my videos, so I can't see anybody.
Okay, apologies. So that was great, and you covered a lot of aspect. Like what the current state of HR, what's the future, and how the past looked like. And it was a wonderful insight to and when you were presenting it, like the 2020 and 2021, I was just thinking of all the changes we were going through, the furlough and the restructuring, and most of you in this call or in this meeting would have experienced that. Thank you very much for it. So this is a time for any questions if you have, and please use the opportunity to have the discussion, and we still have some time left. So I welcome you any questions from you all. Thank you.
I've either made everyone go to sleep or
I've got one question, if I may. Thank you very much, Sarah. Really interesting. I was just wondering, we were talking about the importance of commercial awareness, and I know you talked about your own journey. You'd spent time out of HR and came back in, yes. And that sounded like that had been critical for you. Any specific suggestions or insights or views over the last 18 months as to how people can develop more in terms of commercial awareness, possibly going outside the function? Or are there any other ideas as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think where sometimes HR maybe be a little bit distanced and from sort of the senior business leaders, I think there's always a great opportunity to ask, if you don't see and you don't understand the finances, is to identify who your finance leader is within the business, and even go and have a conversation and understand the bottom line, what the cash flow is like, to understand what for example, the future order book looks like, because what that allows you to do then is to help the business work on whether you need to maybe do a recruitment drive, whether there's going to be some conversations about cost cutting come on. So you don't actually have to, in my mind, you don't have to step out of HR to be able to get that commercial. I think you just have to be interested enough to go and find out how are we doing? What's our cash flow like? You know, what does it look like? Doesn't mean to say you've always got all the answers. And to be honest with you, sometimes you kind of can get a little bit bamboozled with some of the sort of spreadsheets you might be shown. But going back to that curious, go and ask questions. And if you don't understand, ask again. Because if that's, to me, that strategic business partner, you know kind of what's coming down the line. So you know if you're pulled into a meeting room because there maybe have to be some headcount reductions, it doesn't kind of come as a surprise. You're already thinking in your head how you can help. I don't know, Jane, if that answers your question at all.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Thanks, Sarah.
No, that's fine.
Anybody else? Any further questions to Sarah?
Hi, I've got my hand up, Beverly Dash. Can you see?
Okay. Yes. Yes. Apologies. Yes. Seen. Yes. Go for it.
I just wanted to ask Sarah about well-being, actually, because I work in HR myself, and I could really relate to what she was saying when COVID started, because working in a school, we were really looking at government guidance, as you said, coming out on Friday, trying to implement things on a Monday. However, the HR people's well-being seem to be ignored. And I'm interested from your studies, from talking to people, what you have found. Is there any difference now that we're looking at this new variant? I'm now being made redundant, so I'm looking now for an HR role elsewhere. But my biggest question is, how is my well-being going to be looked after? Because it was just a manic 18 months. Which I just wanted to, I couldn't see the light. And my own well-being, my own, if you like, period of burnout came, thankfully, it's a school. So I had 6 weeks school holidays, but I took 3 weeks off in one hit. And that's how I managed in the end. So what's the story?
Yeah, no, Beverly, you're absolutely right. It's, speaking with HR teams in small companies, large companies, people were done. We're tired, really tired. And, as HR, we're great at supporting our leaders. We're great at supporting our employees. When it comes to ourselves, we're not so great in looking after ourselves. So speaking with people, there's everything, Beverly, from people who have done nothing and continued as normal, right the way through to some of our clients who've recognised from the HR point of view that they've needed supported. So we've gone into some clients as kind of like an extra pair of hands, an extra resource to give their internal HR teams time to regroup, breathe, look after themselves, and everything in between. So what we've done personally is, because our HR consultants were out working, so they had the added of going into clients who they didn't know, working remotely, helping out, trying to get that, as well as lockdown, kids at home, everything that kind of goes with it. So we put in wellbeing ambassadors, whereas we asked for volunteers, and we actually quite a lot of volunteers actually, who would then engage regularly and speak with our team and actually come to the business. And as we're employee owned, they knew they could come to us with suggestions on, we give people a wellbeing day off. We looked at people's working practices. We made sure people had really good breaks between assignments to kind of to be able to look after their own mental health and their own well-being. So Beverly, for companies, it's everything from people who've, we've spoken to some HR teams who are done, they're tired, really tired, right the way through to some clients who have gone really above and beyond by taking us in to give their team a break, and everything in between. And I think for me, it's have that conversation with your teams, because what works for one person, as we know, doesn't work for another person. I keep saying, I think it's going to probably be on my gravestone, is communicate. Just have that conversation. It's amazing how many people shy away from a conversation thinking it's going to be difficult. But if you actually ask, invariably it's not so bad. I don't know if that answers your question, Beverly.
Partly, yes, partly. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, it's there's no magic wand, and I think that's what it is. There's just no magic wand at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
And it's never ending. If I use the word bonkers one more time, everything's just bonkers at the minute.
I've been using that word a lot.
Yeah. Any other
That's
questions?
great. Sarah, I have one question, if that's okay. So in your presentation, you mentioned about, the transitioning from a operational HR to a strategic HR. So strategic HR, it is more, it is a good thing to have, but it's really hard. You have to take a lot of effort to make sure that the operations or the business strategy is aligned with what your strategy is. And sometimes, like what I find within my experience could be that, because you may be working for HR, even though it's one organization, you may have your own HR priorities, but the business may have their own priorities. So how do you recommend, during that transition from an operational HR to a strategic HR, how do we make sure that, do you have any tips or, like how do we, because that's one thing, the future is going to look like. So what is a message you wanted to tell to, like, all of us or few of us in the call, how to be a successful strategic partner?
No, and with this as well, it's not turning off the operational on Friday, then on Monday. You just deal with strategy. That doesn't work. We've got the day job and we've got everything else that goes with it. I think for me, you can do small incremental steps. So, for example, it doesn't matter what level of manager you support, or whether you can actually, for me, it's about having that conversation. What are your business priorities? What are you looking to achieve? This is my HR priorities. This is my HR strategy, and this is what we need to achieve. What is it you need to achieve? And actually marrying the both. If I give you an example, from a HR side of things. So I remember in a previous company, we were doing mass redundancies, but corporate had asked us to roll out a whole new performance management, whole new continuous performance management. So in the morning, we were having collective consultation, saying, we're going to lose so many of you. And in the afternoon, we had to go, woohoo, we're going to develop you and we're going to invest in your future. And so it was about, speaking with the managers and saying, right, okay, this is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have half your staff to be able to do it. Let's work together because we have to achieve both. And then working with, for me, I'm a great believer in honesty, speaking with employees in the afternoon and saying, look, we know we're going through collective, but for those of you that are going to remain, we are going to look at the development and the performance improvement and actually taking the two opposing strategies, essentially, and marrying together. And I think that's for me is the difference between somebody who's just down one line and is doing the transactional day to day, or somebody that can take a step back, and I'm so sorry for saying this, I can't think of another sense, who can look at that bigger picture and being able to tie and being able to explain it and to do some actions and some steps in place to do that. Andrew, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's a brilliant, and the example given was like a brilliant example. Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was difficult times, but we got through it.
Okay, great. So anybody else? I don't see any hands, but I'm keen to understand. We can maybe take the last one or two questions if there's anything else to discuss.
Oh, a hand.
Yeah.
Hi.
Diana.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. It was definitely a deja vu as you were going through some of the key highlights of last year. Some of them kind of made me chuckle. Some of them made me happy. We are not in that place any longer. We are somewhere else. But I'm curious, as we were talking about this skills kind of for the future, and then trends, and even some of the policies that we should be focusing on. Do you see them as kind of more UK centric trends, or do you see them as more global trends? And I'm asking because I work for small organizations, but we have employees spread all over the world.
Yeah, we're seeing it globally, because if I kind of think about some of the conversations we've had on, for example, looking at the talent and looking at the career plans. So that's that transitions it doesn't matter where the employee is based. You know, you're still looking at career plans, for example. If we then look at hybrid working, remote working, again, that's gonna on a global basis. And what we're finding as well is some of our international clients, whilst, for example, menopause is huge in the UK at the moment and talking about it, they're looking at translating and having their policy will translate globally. Now, there's obviously going to be some variations depending on the countries and the way that you word things. I think for me, with the policies about supporting is, if you're looking at a culture of, you know, remote working, or for example, flexible working, or saying we're going to do it on your outputs rather than your inputs, do your policies and how you say you operate match up with how you actually do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's good. And it's interesting that you touch on the menopause, because it crossed my mind as well. How do we translate it into some of the contexts? So thank you.
And then I think the biggest thing we're seeing on a kind of like that international and the talent is, you know, we've had some companies who have allowed employees, quite rightly, to go back to home countries and work, and have actually remained there, and we're 18 months on. And again, you know, hadn't actually understood where that then impacted tax, employment law, social security contributions. What we're finding as well is a lot of these countries, the governments are having to claw back money because of coronavirus and not how much money they spent on the pandemic. So what we're finding is that some of these companies are starting to be audited, and all of a sudden have realised that they shouldn't have, you know, they should have had policies in place to be able to deal with that.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay. Good to meet you.
Jane, do you have something to discuss?
Sorry, it's me again. I've got another question. Sarah, I work as a lecturer of postgraduate students. Is there anything from what you've seen over the last 18 months that makes you think there is anything different in terms of the emphasis that we should have? Obviously, we want work-ready graduates, but is there anything that you can see from where you think we should be emphasising something perhaps in a different way or more than we've done before the pandemic?
I don't know if it's so much as emphasising it, more emphasis or differently, but I mean, I'm going to say your non-technical HR, I'm saying HR skills, you know, like the change management, the agile decision making, the influencing, building credibility. That's what if I think about, you know, really good technical consultants we'll put in front of a client or we'll use for projects, where our clients got on really well and where it's a successful conclusion is where people have this really strong non-technical credibility, stakeholder management, change management. So I think it's about understanding that and being able to build that. And sometimes you can only build that by being in the middle of it. But a lot about, there's this huge amount on change management that's out there, you know, as Toffler calls it, change is future shock. How do you lead your employees through the change? So I think for me, if the last 18 months, it's agile decision making and change management. Because as I said, how many times were we asked a question and, you know, we'd only either just heard, you know, furlough. Not many of us had heard about furlough pre-March 2020. And by July, most HR professionals were experts, or as expert as they could be in furlough. So I think for me, it's that. And I also think as well, we're seeing an awful lot of, especially in employment relation cases, where employees are citing mental health or discrimination as a kind of a get out of jail card. Now, it doesn't mean to say that, you know, people don't have this and this is a mitigating factor, and absolutely it needs to be looked at. but it seems to be at the minute, if somebody's been performance managed, there is an awful lot. So it's about having the skills to dig deeper and also to understand through some quite difficult circumstances what you can do and not being afraid to talk to people. And I know that's a really simple, but it's amazing how, you know, you'll speak to a manager and they'll say, well, okay, what did they say? Oh, I didn't ask them. I didn't know if I could ask them. Okay, we'll have that conversation and then let's do that. I don't know, Jane, if that helps you at all.
Yeah,
and
no,
I'm happy to
that's
have
really
a conversation offline if that helps.
Yeah, no, that I might actually take you up on that, but no, that has been really, really helpful. It's really useful to get a perspective from somebody who's out there dealing with it. So thanks very much.
No, that's fine.
Beverly, I think you have your hands raised.
Only that I missed the first slide. So I'm Sarah. I'm not sure if you shared your details, but I would very much like to have a conversation with you. So if we can get in touch somehow, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I'm going to give Angie the updated slides. So what I will do is I'll put my email address on there. I'm happy to chat to anybody. You know, and if there's any questions I can't answer, and I'll be, if there's something I can't answer, I'll tell you.
Glad to hear it.
Right direction.
We have a question in the chat box, Sarah. Are there any resources or book on change management that you would recommend?
Yes, I will put them on the email, and the reason for that is I've got them written down. I'm dreadful at remembering names, so I'll get them. I used to do quite a lot of change management. I worked at General Electric for a few years, so I was one of their change accelerated facilitators. So I've got a whole list of resources that are really useful. So I will share.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That would be helpful for many. Thank you.
More than welcome.
Looking at the time, you know, it's almost like, you know, coming to the end of the session, but any final thoughts or any final questions? Anything? Okay. So thank you everyone for making this event, and you know, to be a successful one. It's greatly appreciated. And Sarah, that was really great, and we really appreciate your time and your effort. And I'm sure that, you know, like many of us in the call have benefited from this, and you will get like a lot of like questions. I'm sure that, you know, especially you have offered us that, you know, people can get in touch with yourself. That is great. Thank you very much.
No problem. You're more than welcome. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.